Good afternoon and welcome back to NWR's Vantage Point Conference. Up next, we have Tony Abrahams, the CEO and co-founder of AI Media. Before I hand it over to Tony, I remind you it's a relatively brief presentation today before we run through a bit more of an interactive and extensive Q&A. Tony, I'll now hand it over to you.
Thanks, Max, and thanks everyone for joining. I co-founded AI Media 20 years ago, and now we're at the point where we've been dreaming about, where the AI, in terms of its advancement, is capable of delivering effectively the holy grail as we've always seen it, which is automatic transcription, captioning and translation. And those same forces that have seen the rapid improvement in AI services like ChatGPT are the same that are fueling this step change really in the technology that we're seeing. So how does AI Media do this? We have effectively taken the universe of AI tools and applied it to captioning, transcription and translation, and done so in a live environment. 2 years ago, we acquired a business based in the US called EEG, and we put that EEG business together with the AI Media Services business, and we've created a true one-stop shop that is technology agnostic, but really ensures that we get the best possible automatic captioning on air for our customers. And the way we do this is really with three key elements of the technology, and those key elements are in the center there of the slide. So the way the technology works, we get video as an input, we add real-time captions to that, and then we send the captioned video output back. I get asked a lot of questions like, well, automatic speech recognition, it's available on my phone, it appears to be free, why do you still have a business? And the answer really is in the middle there, because to get the best out of automatic captioning, you really do need three key elements. The first, and it seems obvious, but it is super critical, is encoding the audio. And that encoding technology very much comes from that New York-based EEG heritage. The EEG team have been building encoding devices for 43 years now, and they have over a 90% market share in US broadcast. Why is encoding technology so important? Well, encoding technology is effectively making sure you can deliver the best possible quality audio into the AI system. And to do that requires a bunch of stuff like denoising, making sure that the audio is as clear as possible, but also some further smarts that we can deliver upstream by ensuring we have multiple audio feeds that go into the encoding devices. And those multiple encoding feeds can be as simple as, say, having isolated audio from each of the commentators in a sports commentary box. Why is that so important? Well, that way the encoding technology already knows who is speaking. And it's also the case that we haven't got any of the crowd noise or the transmission audio, if you like, that we will get from a mixed audio channel like you're watching on TV. That in itself, that encoding technology in and of itself reduces the number of errors by 50%. And that's why that is so critical. So it seems obvious, get the best possible quality audio into the system, you'll get the best possible captioning. The second element, so the first element was encoding. The second element is ICAP, and you can see that on the top there. ICAP is the network that connects all of the encoding devices, but also it connects to the ICAP cloud platform. And why is that ICAP cloud platform so important? Because the ICAP cloud platform is where we put the AI tools. We house all of the dozens of AI tools that we use, very similar to kind of the ChatGPT technology. And then what we do is we seamlessly take that encoded audio, send it up to the ICAP cloud, process it, and then it comes back seamlessly through the ICAP network and delivered to either the television set or the the sport arena or to a personal device. And the final piece of the puzzle is what we call Lexi. And Lexi are the customer-facing AI tools. We've launched a version of that which is live Lexi. We've also got a recorded media version of that where customers can send us a clip and then they will get back the caption file really quickly. The really big killer app though that we're really seeing with this, and why we can see this technology going well beyond broadcast, is the feature called Lexi Library. And what Lexi Library does is it automatically stitches the captions, which is basically timed text, into the media archives of our customers. So all of a sudden, wherever there's a video archive, our customers can now search by word for wherever a particular thumbnail comes up. And that is saving some of our customers about half an hour to 45 minutes a day for, say, some of their video journalists finding the right content that they want to show on air. If there's nothing else that you take away from this brief presentation, it's this slide. It's the fact that there are those 3 key elements that go into it. The encoding technology, the ICAP network and ICAP cloud, and the Lexi family. The thing that makes Lexi perform above and beyond that of the AI tools that are simply in the cloud is the fact that A, we've got the encoding right, but B, what Lexi also does is it reaches into our customers' data systems behind their secure firewalls. And finds the metadata or the context, if you like, of whatever it is that's going to be captioned. So if we're doing the Australian Open on Channel 9, then we will have all of that rundown and we will know that it will be all of the tennis terms. If, for example, we're doing a baseball game for in the States, then similarly there will be defined terms for the baseball. If you mix the 2 of those up, you're going to get terrible results. And that's really where that added benefit of the AI-driven captions come from when we are connected then to our customers' data systems. And then the rest of it's fairly old news because it's all from the first half. But basically revenue was flat, but gross profit up 13%. Gross margin up from 53% to 60%. And all of this is powered by the breakout growth in Lexi. Why is revenue not growing? Well, because we're actively substituting very high-priced human-delivered services for automated services. And so while we have held our revenue constant over the last 3 years pretty much, the volume of captioning, transcription and translation that we are delivering now is 10 times greater. And so we are seeing a lot of that growth underlying in the new technology services that we're providing. And we're seeing very, very strong uptake of that across the board. And as I said, we're expecting to see industries well beyond broadcast take this on as it becomes ever more ubiquitous. A few of the global sales wins. It's a mix of customers transitioning to Lexi, new premium services customers, new ICAP customers switching on ICAP and switching on Lexi, and event partnerships as well. In terms of that ICAP growth, you can see the Lexi growth. You can see we acquired EEG just 2 years ago. At the time, 16% of the total traffic was delivered with Lexi. By December, that had more than doubled to 35%. And as I have previously disclosed, it was 37% in January and 39% in February. And so we are very much seeing that growth in volume continuing. As we've transitioned, I mentioned that we're transitioning from the legacy services, time and materials billing to a monthly SaaS and support model. That has grown now to be 38% of the total from 0 a couple of years ago. We're obviously seeing macro conditions play into our favour as our customers want more captioning with less budget, and that's certainly what Lexi is delivering. We're seeing, notwithstanding the very flat revenue growth, massive increases in operating leverage as our gross margins have gone from 38 to 60%, and an EBITDA turnaround from a -$7 million EBITDA loss in the first half of FY21 to an EBITDA profit of $1.4 million in the first half this year. And continuing cash flow, positive cash flow is absolutely where we will aim and will be continuing. In terms of strategic outlook, just quickly, I mentioned that those technologies, and I'll stop here, this will be the last slide, that the technologies that have powered something like ChatGPT very similarly have gone into improving the AI engines that sit inside the ICAP cloud and are available through Lexi, and for which the encoding technology is optimized. So Max, I might just pause there and just see if there's any questions.
Thanks, Tony. And just a quick reminder, you can ask a question via the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. And we have a few here. First question is, ACMA tightened captioning compliance checks in the last year or so and found a couple of channels to be in breach of standard. Is it also now in consultation to refresh the broadcasting services television captioning standards? Is the tightening of captioning requirements a trend you see globally? And are there any implications positively or negatively on AI media?
Very good question. So ACMA is the Australian Communications and Media Authority. It is the regulator of the Broadcasting Services Act, and it regulates captioning. We have publicly stated and privately stated, both to government and to the regulator, we note various Senate estimates inquiries that have gone on about this, that the Australian captioning legislation is out of date. The Australian captioning legislation was written in 2010, when none of the technology that I'm talking about now was either available or possible. Fundamentally, there is a misunderstanding at a bureaucratic level as to what is capable with the technology, and we have got a commitment from both ACMA and the government to refresh the regulatory framework in Australia this year. Importantly, and I thank the questioner for their question, the regulator in the UK, which is called Ofcom, is doing a similar thing. The very good news is that the Ofcom legislation is already more modern than the Australian one, having been updated just before COVID, as has the Canadian regulations. Those regulations are more statistical, which is critical. The ACMA approach at the moment is a strict liability approach, where anytime any mistake is made, it's unacceptable. That just doesn't reflect the way the technology works. It is a statistical science, and it follows a bell curve. We just released, for example, a new version of Lexi 3.0, where the average score went up from 98.2, and keep in mind that 98 is acceptable, and this is a standard that we want ACMA to adopt, but they haven't yet. But the UK and the Canadian regulator and a bunch of European and Asian regulators have done, which is to basically say, if you get 98% in a live environment, that's good enough. Obviously, we want to get closer to 100, and the closer you get to 100, the better it is. But 98 is the basic kind of trade-off between what's acceptable and what's not. Lexi 2.0, i.e. the version that we had a few months ago, scored on average 98.2. And so when you look at kind of the bell curve and you go, well, 98.2 is here, 98 is acceptable, anything to the right of that, which was about 60% of content, could be delivered with Lexi. These breakthrough improvements in AI have also impacted on massively on the increased quality of Lexi. So Lexi, I mean, we were eking out improvements of 0.1 on Lexi in sort of an 18-month period. This latest update, rather than adding 0.1, has added 0.5. So it's gone from 98.2 to 98.7 on average. And so what that means is you've shifted the entire bell curve to the right. And so instead of just 60% of content delivering over 98%, you're now getting 90% of content delivering over 98%. And what that means is more and more content can be delivered with Lexi and not reliant on those old style human operators. So absolutely, we need to stay focused and working with the regulators, both in Australia and overseas. But I'm pretty optimistic, given early discussions, that we will get to a more sensible place on the regulation than that which ACMA has adopted in the recent past.
Thanks, Tony. Are you able to talk about how the board is currently thinking about capital management going forward, given the current cash balance and momentum in the positive EBITDA? And an extension of that is, are there any acquisitions out there at the moment?
I'm not going to obviously countenance internal board deliberations on this call, but what I will say is that we have got about a $7 million earnout for the EEG vendor that's fully earned and that needs to come out of that cash balance. And that's obviously a major component of that. And so any other capital management tools need to be considered within that context as well. In terms of acquisitions, we said after EEG that was the really big one that we needed to bed down, and that we wouldn't be looking at major acquisitions for a year or two. That's obviously elapsed. We are actively exploring opportunities in the market, whether it's necessary to acquire a business to get access to the technology, or whether in fact the partnership approach like we have been taking is the right one, is certainly something that we continue to have a look at on a regular basis as part of the overall capital management policy as well.
Thanks, Tony. Next question here is, revenue has been flat while you've been transitioning to higher margin products. When should we expect top line revenue to return to growth?
So I'm not giving any forward-looking statements, but what I will say is that, you know, as the transition continues, you know, we're about a bit over a third of the way there, 38% of the way there as of December. You know, by the time we're fully through it, then absolutely the top line will start growing again, because the underlying volume numbers are going through the roof. It's really just a question of when those two lines actually intersect. But I'm not particularly worried about when the top line starts growing again. It obviously will. But the most important thing is that we're locking in this very, very high quality, very recurring revenue at very high margins by delivering customers a product that is superior to something that they paid 5 or 6 times as much for just last year. And so, you know, continuing to delight those customers, continuing to look for index customers in new markets that haven't necessarily considered embedding this always on transcription service, and whether it's, you know, a Lexi library feature or a Lexi recorded feature or a Lexi live feature, we certainly believe that there's huge market opportunity above and beyond US broadcast, where we still have the bulk of our revenues coming from in terms of Lexi.
Thanks, Tony. Next question is sort of 2 parts, which you kind of touched on before. Are you witnessing any changes in customer behaviour and regulations globally when it comes to captioning? And if so, what are the opportunities?
So look, not really in terms of customer behaviour, because the regulations haven't actually changed since COVID, whereas obviously the AI world has completely changed since just over the last couple of years. Our customers are keen to ensure that there is obviously a sensible regulatory framework going forward. So we're working hand in glove with them and the industry associations to improve the regulatory settings. But we are obviously seeing more and more of our customers transitioning across from premium services to Lexi. I mean, the first customer that did that was in Australia, was Sky News. And in the course of doing so, they went from captioning 7 hours a day to captioning 24 hours a day, in part because they were providing this service for their customers, and in part because they wanted the Lexi Library service available for their journalists. And the budget envelope is the same as it was with 7 hours. So this is really the compelling proposition, to try to get this service more ubiquitous in more customers right around the world, and in ever more industries. And we really do believe that the encoding technology, that 43 years of accumulated intellectual property, will work as well in a rack that sits in a courtroom as it will in a rack at a broadcaster in New York.
Thanks, Tony. Just one last question here. Can you discuss the competitive landscape? Who are your main competitors, and what are your key differentiating points?
Yeah, look, we have competitors, speaking about, ICAP, encoding, and Lexi. We have competitors in the encoding space, but we don't have any competition at this stage in the networked layer, right? In the ICAP layer. There's nobody else that's got an ICAP cloud. There's nobody else that connects all those devices. Our biggest competitor in the US is a company called ENCO, E-N-C-O. They do the encoding, but they don't actually future-proof it by making sure that the AI tools are actually sitting on the cloud, and that they are refreshed almost daily. That's what we do, and therefore they compete at a much lower end of the market than we do. So we're very much the premium service there, while making sure that the very best encoding and the very best AI is available to all our customers, and there's nobody out there that does all of that. Of course, there's many companies that do the captioning and the transcription, but that's why our focus since acquiring EEG has been on the technology side of things, and that's certainly where we see things going, and have seen things going ever since well before we acquired EEG and wanted to acquire EEG. And I think the rest of the world is now starting to catch up to the breakthrough benefits of AI that we've seen for a very long time.
Thanks, Tony. I'll just now hand it back to you for some closing remarks.
Thanks, Max. Look, thanks very much, everyone, for attending. They were some of the best questions, I think, and most in-depth questions I've ever fielded at an event like this. We're very, very excited to effectively take this AI moment that the world is seeing and take it for deliver that technology for our customers in a way that's future-proofed, and in a way that really grows the number of industries right around the world taking benefit from a lot of investment that's already happened. The good news is that the challenge for us going forwards is very much about sales. It's not about product. It's not about operations. And we think that the future of AI, captioning, transcription, and translation is just getting started. Thanks, Max.
Thanks, Tony. That concludes the session.